Well, hello, everyone. Appreciate you joining the session this afternoon. We're getting started a few minutes past the hour here. We've got quite a few people on the call. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Lachlan Cash. I'm a Principal Program Manager with the Microsoft Dynamics D365 engineering team. Today, I'm with our partners at Amazon, and we wanted to take you through some of the capabilities that we have with Microsoft Dynamics that you could use with Amazon Business, which is our PunchOut capabilities. So that's what the session today is about, using the purchase requisition PunchOut capabilities with Amazon Business. So it is a tech talk. We're going to explain what Amazon Business is, and then we're going to explain some of the setup in Microsoft Dynamics if you want to use those capabilities. And the Amazon team will share how you can also work with them in terms of workshops that they have and resources they have. So there is a self-integration guide that the Amazon team have put together that links to the Microsoft Dynamics documentation. As I mentioned, they do have integration workshops. If you did want to work with them, they can help you with the setup as well, using some of the documentation from Microsoft Dynamics. And so I introduced myself, so Lachlan Cash, and today we have our team from Amazon Business, Mahesh, Everett, and Alexandra. So they'll introduce themselves as they get going. And so I did want to thank them for joining and participating in this webcast to share kind of those capabilities and how you could use Amazon Business together with Microsoft Dynamics. So just as a little bit of a context for the agenda, we'll just give you an introduction to the procurement sourcing capabilities. Amazon will give you an introduction to the Amazon Business, some of the benefits of Amazon Business, and then we'll talk about what the PunchOut capability is. We'll show you what it looks like and where the setup is in Microsoft Dynamics. And if it is something that you're interested in, how you can get started and work with the Amazon Business team. So it is worth sort of pointing out that every customer is different in terms of how they look at their procurement strategy. So obviously in Microsoft Dynamics, we produce base core functionality with different configurations, and you can use that based on your business strategy with partners like Amazon Business to configure and use that if that's a strategy in terms of how you want to manage your spend capabilities with a supplier that aggregates different supplier and different products together, for example. So that's part of the procurement strategy that you might have in your organization. How do you manage indirect spend? What we wanted to get across today is that these capabilities already exist in Microsoft Dynamics, so you can use those together with a business partner like Amazon Business, for example. And so those capabilities are mainly based in our Microsoft Dynamics supply chain capabilities. So the procurement, requisition, purchase order management. We did introduce some new features back in about 2020, so they will be in your environment if you wanted to turn on those features, which is the external catalog configuration. And we'll show you how to use those with Amazon Business. So if you are a Microsoft Dynamics D365 customer, you do have these features. It's just a matter of turning them on and configuring them. If you wanted to use them, you can use them in a test environment, for example. So they are mostly part of the supply chain. There is obviously capabilities that spill across to the finance capabilities in our ERP capabilities. And that's one that we are collaborating with Amazon to, for example, you can use the invoice service. And can we automate that a little better with Amazon in terms of receiving that invoice, for example? But what we'll take you through today is the requisition, purchase order communication with Amazon. So that is part of the Microsoft Dynamics D365 portfolio family. And so this is part of our overall capabilities within the source to pay capabilities in Dynamics. And specifically what we're going to talk about today is the requisition capabilities with those external suppliers, like Amazon being an external supplier that you could leverage these capabilities with. And so we will talk about the requisition management. That's essentially what you can use to set up and configure these capabilities with. So with that, I'll talk more about that when we come back and do a demonstration. With that, I'll hand over to the Amazon team. They can give you an introduction to the Amazon business, and then we'll explain how to configure it.
Thanks, Lachlan. Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandra Lay. I'm an account manager at Amazon Business, and I work with business customers that have adopted Amazon Business. In the next few slides, we're going to see a bit of an overview of Amazon Business, what the benefits are, generally how organizations use Amazon Business, and then towards the end of the presentation, Lachlan and Mahesh will walk you through again more of the technical demonstration and configuration part. So Amazon Business was launched in the US in 2015 and is Amazon's tailored solution for corporate customers. We provide a purchasing platform that organizations can use to fully configure and control their purchases, and the platform hosts one of the biggest and broadest selections of products in the world. We work with all kinds of customers, from small businesses to large enterprise customers. We work with 6 million customers worldwide and 96 of Fortune 100 companies. And we're present in 9 different marketplaces. So through that, we cover all of North America and most of Europe, as well as India and Japan. Then throughout the years, we have constantly added new features to improve the experience for the companies we work with. So one of the key features to call out has been the launch of Business Prime, which is the great Amazon delivery service, which offers free next-day delivery on all eligible items. Another key launch from 2022 was our Climate Pledge Friendly program with over 300,000 products. And the key one, probably especially for this call, is the integration capabilities with partners such as Microsoft Dynamics and others. So overall, Amazon Business does integrate with over 200 procurement applications. So when our team at Amazon Business talks to customers around their procurement, there's always a few key themes that emerge. Organizations, they want to provide a simple user experience to the people buying. They want to have the full visibility and control over all of their purchases. But most importantly, they want to drive efficiency and reduce costs, especially when talking about those low value, high volume purchases where Amazon Business really excels. And there are 4 key pillars that I walk you through of how Amazon Business helps to simplify purchasing and increase efficiency for those type of purchases. And number 1 is that we empower employees through an easy-to-use platform that users are familiar with using. They can quickly find, compare, request, or purchase the products that they need, and all while being compliant with the company's buying policies that have been set up in the account. Number 2 is the time saving for administrators. So that's one through the built-in controls and policies that just require minimal intervention on a day-to-day basis. But it's also, especially when talking about integration, it's an automated flow of data between Amazon Business and Microsoft Dynamics, following all of the approval flows and everything that you have set up already in Microsoft Dynamics. The third pillar is that Amazon Business helps organizations save resources. And again, that is for those high volume, low value transactions where we see often employees submitting expense claims or have lengthy requesting processes. So through the platform of Amazon Business and with an integration of Microsoft Dynamics, this process can be streamlined and it saves a lot of resources for those low value purchases. And then the final pillar is the central account structure that you get with Amazon Business, which you have one account that can host multiple legal entities and groups, and any kind of restrictions or policies that you set up cascade through all of the different layers in the account. Also, when talking about integrations, if you have some entities that work with Microsoft Dynamics, but maybe others don't have any procurement system that can support yet, you can have one central account and can have a PunchOut catalog, but also users just using the platform with the same policies and restrictions and have everything under one reporting suite. Here we see a pattern that's common for really almost all of the organizations that we work with, where you see the indirect spend, so a graph of the indirect spend of organizations and the number of suppliers that they have to manage for that. So when we talk about contracted spend or some core purchasing for the companies, there's a very small number of suppliers that companies have to manage, and there are specific procurement processes already in place for that. But when it comes to more of the ad hoc purchases, any low value, high volume purchases, you see the supplier number is huge, and the total spend is very small. So companies spend a lot of resources managing this tail spend, how we call it. So these low value ad hoc purchases from all the different kinds of suppliers. Well, in reality, they should spend their time more on the core categories that make an impact for the organization. So through Amazon Business, we'll give you an easy platform to consolidate that supplier base across the tail spend and have an official purchasing channel that's also integrated with Microsoft Dynamics to manage all of these ad hoc, low value and high volume purchases. And recently, we have also launched some different pricing programs and catalogs where we can support more in the contracted space. So for categories such as office supplies, IT peripherals, break room items, cleaning supplies, and even MRO, through Amazon Business, you can benefit from a core catalog with custom pricing that you can discuss with your account management team, and that they can find the right solution for your business based on the needs. Here, you have a high-level overview of some of the challenges that organizations have with their tail spend. So all of the low-value, high-volume items, which go often through a purchasing card or credit cards, where organizations that don't really have any visibility over what has been bought. Obviously, it doesn't follow any approval workflow as you would have set up in Microsoft Dynamics. Also, sometimes it goes over expense claims, again, taking up a lot of resources really for those low value purchases, and there's a lack of visibility here as well. And then the two final ones are where we see companies sending offline requests or special requests again for those items, which take a lot of resources and time from the procurement teams. And my colleague Everett will talk you through now the different benefits of Amazon Business and how we help organizations address all of those challenges.
Thank you, Alexandra. So yeah, I think you're going to hear a few sentiments that are going to be echoed from what Alexandra was able to articulate. But ultimately, 30,000-foot view, when you're thinking of Amazon Business, in terms of look and feel, it's very similar to the consumer retail site that you may be doing currently work purchases or home purchases on. As you can see in this testimonial that the head of services of portfolio articulated, is that ultimately what a lot of organizations are trying to do is trying to find a mechanism that their colleagues and stakeholders can find what they need and then get back to their job at hand, especially if it's a relatively low cost dollar item product. So anything that's ultimately under $25, which is like average cart on Amazon Business, you don't want your employees doing 3 bids in a buy for something like that. Let the marketplace work as a function for that. So for these 3 pillars right here, this kind of walks you through as it relates to why organizations really want to lean in and address that existing Amazon spend or just indirect spend that was articulated prior. So within Amazon Business, you have a deeper depth and breadth of product selection, and it's more business-centric content that you would see on the marketplace. And what that does when you bring all of the different cohorts within your organization, whether you have multi-legal entity structuring or you have different divestors or you're acquiring companies, you can bring that all into one account so you can get that full visibility, that control, and enable those compliance mechanisms to ensure that employees are buying what they need, that the organization wants them to be able to purchase. Now, within that, when you have both the competitive pricing and you have the ease and familiarity of being able to make purchases on a e-commerce tool that you may be using at home, what that does is it equals to the reduction of the total cost of buying. So there are dichotomies between the retail marketplace and the business marketplace. Off the bat, business pricing and selection, you have more depth and breadth of products, but you also get business pricing. So what we see on average is anywhere from a 6 to 7% more competitive price on the business marketplace than the retail marketplace on an apples to apples product. And you've heard us say a few times about multi-user account. I think that's where the real true value comes in. Most organizations are buying on Amazon in some form or facet, but gaining that true visibility into when someone has a need to when it gets fulfilled and getting that digital footprint on that within one centralized environment can be very empowering. And you can ultimately help optimize that spend and maybe cut costs within that spend once you've put a plan in place. Also, bulk ordering. So we have bulk ordering mechanisms on the marketplace. So if you have individuals within your organization that may have capital expenditure purchases and budgets, if they don't use it, they lose it. They could utilize quantity-based discounts as a mechanism within the Amazon e-commerce tool. And then driving compliance. You've heard that a few times as well. As it relates to driving compliance, you may want to be able to enable approval workflows for a given dollar threshold or what have you. Within the Amazon business, you have the ability to do that and set up multiple tiers as it relates to that, those policies and preferences. And then the back end of Amazon business is the business analytics. So you're going to have the ability to gain visibility and monitor activity, whether it be across spend or across categories or even socially responsible purchasing. If you have KPIs or metrics around sustainability or climate pledge friendly or even diversity credentials associated with small businesses or women-owned or veteran-owned organizations, there's over 70 different data points captured on a given order, so your team can benchmark and be able to report back to any types of purchases on Amazon Business. And then lastly is Business Prime. This is probably the biggest value add with Amazon Business. As it relates to most people, when you think of Prime, you think of fast free delivery for those Prime checkmarked items, which is absolutely the same. So you get the same for same day, 1 day, and 2 day delivery associated with purchases that are Prime eligible. You also have other different mechanisms that you have the ability to enable, like guided buying. And guided buying is where you can prefer a given category or item. You can restrict given categories, and then you can ultimately block as well. Those are really good ways to be able to guide employees to purchase what is recommended by the organization and purchase over alternative items. And then the last piece, you heard me talk about spend visibility. Another layer to that is when you enable Prime, you get access to digestible dashboards that are very similar to like Microsoft BI or Tableau, where you're going to be able to adjust and see your spend, whether it be your aggregated shipping savings or as we articulate it, maybe more of like the sustainable purchases, but just like in a bar chart format. And then I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Mahesh.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mahesh Reddy. I'm an integration lead here at Amazon Business. Now, let's delve into the world of PunchOut. In essence, PunchOut represents an electronic bridge between the customer's internal e-procurement system like Dynamics 365 and the suppliers like Amazon Business. But why do we need PunchOut? What are the benefits? Without PunchOut, the organization spend is distributed. Consolidating the spend and estimating for future purchases is a challenge. PunchOut simplifies the overall purchasing experience. It centralizes the purchases and provides better control on the organization's spend, and it enforces the users to comply with the organization's spend policies and plan for future purchases. Now, let's see the end-to-end PunchOut journey. So, in the overall end-to-end flow, here on the e-procurement system, Dynamics 365, the end user will click on the Amazon Business tile, which will take the user directly to Amazon, where the user will do the shopping and take the cart for approvals. At this stage, this is called a requisition, which will go through your organization's workflow, approval workflow. And once it's approved, That's where the purchase order will be created and sent to Amazon Business. We will see this in action end to end in this session. So how do we do it with Amazon Business and Microsoft Dynamics 365? What are the steps involved? First, if you are a net new customer, you have to create a new Amazon Business account, and then you need to create a PunchOut group, which will generate the PunchOut credentials. Those credentials you have to configure within Dynamics 365 platform, and then you need to test the end-to-end to validate the connectivity and also the PunchOut and PO integration testing. So let's see the high-level steps here. So this is where you will create a group. I will show all these things in action in a moment. And once you create the group, here you have an option for shared payment methods and shared addresses. And you configure the purchasing system where you select Dynamics 365. The credentials are generated here. So let me share my screen. This is my Amazon Business account. I go to the business settings page. So under members, I click on groups. So now I'm creating a new group here. So Microsoft Dynamics 365 PunchOut group, and the shared payment methods and shared addresses for the sake of this demo. And when I click on add group, that's when my group will be created. Amazon Business PunchOut group will be created. And I click on the group. I configure purchasing system. Here, I will be selecting Microsoft Dynamics 365. So here you have an option to download the self-service guide. This will guide you to how to configure on Amazon side as well as on Dynamics 365 side as well. So these are the credentials generated. Hit save here. Now my credentials are generated. So these are the identity, shared secret, the PunchOut URL, and purchase order URL. So these are the credentials that you need to configure on Dynamics 365 end. And as long as your status of the group is in test mode, you can do the PunchOut and you can send out test purchase orders. Your payment method like credit card or pay by invoice will not be charged because the group is in test mode, but you will be able to test your PunchOut connection as well as the purchase order connection. Again, here is the detailed self-service guide, which will help you walk you through the end-to-end configuration on both on the Dynamics side as well as on the on the Amazon Business side as well as on Dynamics 365 side. With that, I will hand it over to Laklan Cash from Dynamics 365 to go over Dynamics 365 Amazon Business PunchOut demo.
Thanks, Mahesh. As Mahesh mentioned, anyone can create an account on Amazon Business. And as he showed, you can take those credentials and then we can then go and configure them within the external catalog capabilities within Microsoft Dynamics. So let's have a look at that. What this does is allows you to use the requisition. So you can use the workflow within the requisition process. You can use your budget control mechanisms within finance. All of those standard functionalities within the ERP application you can use together with a vendor like Amazon to control that spending. So if we switch across and we have a look at Microsoft Dynamics, I've got a vendor configured here. If we have a look at the parameters, we can see that we've created a category, and this will be the default category in terms of office, the desk accessories. The employees can change those as the shopping basket comes back from Amazon. But more importantly, we have a parameter that can be configured to default on the purchase orders when the requisitions are converted from requisition to a purchase order. Then they're enabled to be sent back to Amazon through CXML. And so this will default on the purchase orders. Now, as Mahesh mentioned, you can go and register and create an account with Amazon Business. So once you've done that, you can take those credentials and you'll have unique ones to your accounts, specific to what you set up. but you can go into procurement and sourcing and the external catalogs. It is worth mentioning that, as Mahesh mentioned, in their system, they have a link to a really good guide that the team there have put together. But equally, you'll find the documentation on the Microsoft Dynamics Learn site. So if you search for purchasing CXML enhancements, this will give you a lot of the configuration as well that's specific to Dynamics if you want to set this up with a vendor like Amazon or other vendors, for example. So we're just following some of those steps and instructions. So I have the external catalog here. I've linked it to the vendor account that I created. And then we do have the message format here. This is the CXML message that is used to initiate the flow between Dynamics and the Amazon vendor system. And so what we'd do is we'd take those credentials from that Amazon business site and simply copy and paste them in here. So we just really need to copy those two parameters back into Dynamics, and then that'll establish the connection. What we can also do is specify setup, as you saw in probably some of those menus in the Amazon system, and as the team were explaining, you can control the employee spending by having different employees, different accesses. So what we provided was a parameter which is the extrinsics. And so if you configure this, when the employee uses it, it'll send the employee's email across to Amazon so that those settings that are relevant to an employee will take effect on Amazon, for example. So in this case, we've got the user email, and then this will use the user options email from the parameters here. So if I go into my account, you'll see my email address. And this is the one that's going to be used when I go across to Amazon and purchase, and then I'll have that configuration for me. We do provide a lot of other parameters that can control things like what addresses you use. These are called the order properties. I won't go through each and every parameter because it will take us a while to go through, but they are documented on the documentation site how you might want to use some of these parameters. Like Mahesh mentioned, you've got things like how you use addresses. Employees can have their own addresses if they're remote. You want to use different shipping addresses to have the goods sent to the employee. Those can be confirmed and updated from the purchase order, but you can set defaults, how Dynamics will update the orders, how you use that. So let's have a look at this in action. We're going to go across and we're going to use the purchase requisition. So I'm going to find procurement sourcing. We'll find the requisitions here. And so in this case, I'm going to create a new requisition. So I'll just say it's for a monitor, for example. And of course, this is where we can specify information like which legal entity I'm buying it for. So you can use all that policy configuration in Dynamics to help you with financial dimension setup, things like that, that you might want to use to control your processes back in the ERP once you've enabled that employee to purchase. You can also control things like through the workflow, and we'll see that in a minute, how you might want to configure, do you need approval for a manager, for example? So what I see when I'm in my requisition is external catalogs. That configuration that we've got on that external catalog, we can put an image, and I've just put an image here, but the employee can then open this in browser, and then they're going to be navigated over to the Amazon site. Like Everett mentioned, they get that shopping experience as any sort of Amazon shopping experience, but now they're in Amazon Business. And so they get that configuration that's specified here. So they can look through the catalog of what they need to buy. In this case, I'm going to buy a monitor. And so I'll just pick anyone from the list, for example. And so what I can do there is add it to my cart. And when I'm ready for checking out, I can simply check out. And Amazon do have some additional configuration. These can be configured, for example, is there a corporate spending card that might want to be used? This can also be configured to pay on account so that Amazon will invoice later, for example. We can have default shipping addresses. So these are all configurations between the Amazon settings and the Microsoft Dynamics settings that you can choose how you want to run the processes for your business. So in this case, we're just going to submit them back to Dynamics. We're going to use the approval process in Dynamics and essentially the workflow. So I can choose and change a category, for example. I've just got the one item in this case. But more importantly, what comes across is the right numbers. So you've got the supplier auxiliary ID, the external item numbers. These come across in that shopping basket so that when the purchase order is created, they're created for the right numbers back on Amazon. So in this case, I'm going to submit it to Workflow. And you can use all the standard workflow configuration in Dynamics to do approvals. You might want to have a minimum spending. So, in this case, it's $79. You might have an approval limit where anything over $80 needs a manager approval. And so that's all up to you in terms of how you want to configure that and how you want to streamline your processes. And so in this case, this will go to a manager for approval. But just in the spirit of having something already ready, I'm going to go across to my purchase orders. So I'll see here that I've got an order already approved, for example. And so this is when the purchase requisition is approved, then it will come across. What's important to look at is that in the header of the purchase order, we can see that this is defaulted from the vendor. And so this purchase order is enabled to be sent to Amazon via CXML. And what that means is that if you have those right numbers, say, for example, you do a purchase order once a month for certain materials, if you've done a previous purchase order, you can actually just copy the previous purchase order. You don't need to do a requisition. The previous purchase order will have, for example, the line items on it, which will have the item numbers that you originally got from Amazon. So as long as you've got those numbers, you can manually do a purchase order, for example. But if you do want to send it, you'll need to flag it so that it's enabled to be sent through the mechanism. So we can confirm, and so that confirming process prepares the purchase order so that it can be submitted back to the vendor that you're working on, and in this case, Amazon. And so we can have a look at those through the purchase order requests. You'll see that I've got one sitting here waiting. And what this means is that I haven't actually sent this purchase order to Amazon or my vendor. That can be done. In this case, I'm going to do it manually, but you might want to collect them all over the course of a day and submit them at the end of the day. That's up to you how you might want to run your processes. But in this case, I'm just going to submit it. I won't use the batch process, but that's what you can do to automatically just have these sent. And again, this is being sent by the parameters that are on that external catalog. So, how does Dynamics know where to go and send this purchase order? All of that information is set up on that external catalog. So if I say OK here, for example, what this is going to do is take that purchase order, and my account at this stage is set up as test, as Mahesh mentioned. If I'm a business partner with Dynamics and I'm showing this to customers, or you're a customer and you're looking at testing this functionality, you can set up that Amazon business account in test. And so therefore you can change all these parameters and make sure that it works, for example. But in this case, I've sent it. If I just refresh, you'll see that it's acknowledged, which means that we've communicated to Amazon, and then we get an OK message. And this is quite important because, like I mentioned, some of those item numbers, or you might be missing addresses, you'll get information back from Amazon if you don't have a right item number, for example. And so that's obviously why it's quite efficient if you do it through the requisition, because all of that right information is coming back from the vendor, Amazon, so that the employee doesn't have to rekey it. It's going to come back. And so that's really a really quick sort of walkthrough of some of these capabilities. Again, as we've seen, as Mahesh explained, what we've essentially seen is that purchase requisition punch out. So the employee can see the catalog. We go over to Amazon Shopping. We'll get the shopping basket back. We can approve it, in which case we'll create a purchase order based on our policies in Dynamics, and then we'll send the purchase order back to Amazon. And if I wasn't in test mode, Amazon will then initiate shipping and billing that product to us, for example. So that's a really quick walkthrough. Again, these capabilities are in Microsoft Dynamics. If you are working with a vendor like Amazon Business, you can simply enable these features, do the configuration of the parameters. So that's really part of our procure to pay functionality, that you can use that requisition and that buying experience, again, together with some of our finance capabilities, so that you can manage that budgeting process or capabilities like that. So hopefully you find that sort of useful in terms of configuration. I'll hand back to the Amazon team to give you a little bit more update in terms of how you might be able to work with them if you're interested in collaborating.
Yep. And thank you, Lachlan. Very informative. So what's the next steps, right? So 3 easy steps to get started. First, you're going to want to create your Amazon business account if you don't already have one. Depending on what region you are in, if you're in the US, you'd go to amazon.com/business. UK, amazon.uk/business as well. And then you would be able to type in credentials to be able to create your account. After that's done, you're going to want to generate your PunchOut credentials. And then this next step, you're going to want to enter your Amazon Business PunchOut credentials into Dynamics 365. After that, you would conduct an end-to-end test order to validate the connectivity. And believe it or not, you'll be ready to launch. So we do have dedicated workshops for you for the PunchOut setup. So we will set up your end-to-end integration on a 30-minute call. They're going to be held August 5th through the 7th. So look out for sign-up links in the post email from this webinar. And the individuals that will be presenting is the Amazon Business Technical Team. And then obviously your purchasing manager and yourself. So again, I did want to reiterate what Lachlan said at the very beginning of the call. We have meticulously crafted some self-service guides that will be tailored specific to Dynamics 365 PunchOut integration. So please take a look at those tangible documentations. And then if you have any questions or you just simply need to connect with an Amazon Business Account Management team, each one of you or organizations has a dedicated account executive that will be able to assist when it comes to any of these types of things, especially with integrations. So please email contact-amazonbusiness@amazon.com. Again, to those self-service guides, those will be in the follow-up email. This PowerPoint deck that we just presented will be in the follow-up email, as well as what I referenced prior, those integration workshops will all be there as well. Then we will open it up for questions. Back to you, Lachlan.
Thanks, Everett. I do appreciate the Amazon team coming and explaining the capability. Hopefully that gave people a view in terms of the core capability we have and how you could use it if you want to work with Amazon as a strategic supplier. One of the questions that came up from our Dynamics partners that do a lot of demonstrations for customers is it possible to get a demo account? My suggestion was that anyone can register for an account with Amazon Business as a business Dynamics business partner organization. You can just register for account, and as Mahesh mentioned, you can just run that in test mode, and therefore you can use that for your demonstrations, for example. But I'll let the Amazon team add any more to that.
Yeah, you're right, Lachlan. So there is no charge for that, so it's absolutely free. So you can create a business account and you can test you can test from your end, and we can also help from Amazon side, as Everett mentioned on the self-service guides as well. Everett, please.
Yeah. Just to kind of to piggyback on that, creating an Amazon Business account in terms of the difficulty is very simple. It takes like 1 minute. And then also there is no charge of creating an Amazon Business account, even if you add 1 user or 1 million users. So Very easy. Just go to amazon.com/business, follow the prompts, as well as amazon.uk/business, follow those prompts. If you have run into any issues, please shoot an email to that email address that we had on that slide, and we'd be able to respond in a prompt fashion, okay?
And I'll go through all the Q&As and put in a response after we close the meeting. I won't be able to get all of them sort of done, but I'm just going to walk through a few of them. One of the questions, and for the Amazon business team, does Amazon Business compare prices based on regional and worldwide?
Yeah, so that's a good question. One of the big things I think associated to that question that may not be known is that each marketplace is different. So like it would be separate accounts. The reason why is because there's different dichotomies between different marketplaces. As Alexandra stated earlier in the slide, what was the roadmap of different marketplaces going live? So US was the first marketplace in 2015. It's much more mature marketplace. So you're going to have different attributes that you could be able to leverage than maybe a marketplace that just went live this year in Mexico. With that, as it relates to the pricing, they're always ever changing. So for a given product, if I were to buy this mouse, today is going to look different than 6 months from now. Usually in the benefit of the consumer, because essentially they're sellers bidding for your business to be able to get that pricing. So long way to answer the question. I know that usually that question alludes into different marketplaces. The pricing is going to be different than in a UK marketplace, Canada, or the US for a given product that's apples to apples. But the last piece to understand is any consumer marketplace or retail account within those specific marketplaces or regions are going to be usually at a higher cost than on a business account. So you're going to want to be able to be on that business account. I'll digress.
There's a lot of really good questions in the chat, so I'll spend some time after the session to try to put as much information as I can in there. One of them, for example, was accounting teams need multiple procurement categories set up mapped to different GL accounts. So that can be done. We have a default category when the procurement items come back from Amazon. The default category will be put there. What the user can do is obviously select a different category if you choose to do that, and obviously then based on the requisition and then the financial dimensions set up, you can have different financial dimensions on that requisition that'll pass through to the purchase order, for example. So there is ways to look at those capabilities. Again, I'll put some more notes in the questions, for example. One of the questions was, how are invoices communicated back to D365 from Amazon? This is a really good question. This is something that I've been working with Mahesh on. There is a capability. Amazon can obviously email you the invoices. That's how it's done today. We are looking at, it's a roadmap investigation that we're looking at and testing with Amazon, which is, we do have an invoice service with Dynamics. That would be the natural place for us to be able to make sure that we could receive the invoice from Amazon and then use the workflow and capabilities that the invoice service has in terms of putting the invoice back into Dynamics. So that's currently under investigation, if that's the right path to help you automate the invoice receival back from Amazon. So at the moment it's manual. That's some work in progress that we're looking at in investigating. One of the other questions is, what about the product different in Amazon compared to the purchase order? I think if I interpret that question, the key here is that the item numbers that are on Amazon get transferred so that the user doesn't have to transfer item numbers. They can just look for the product that they want. And then the information that gets sent backwards and forwards in the communication between the systems will capture the right item numbers, external item ID, supplier auxiliary item ID, for example, and that's what's communicated back in the purchase order to Amazon. if you have a wrong product number, if you manually created a purchase order, that's when you try to send the purchase order to Amazon, you'll get an error message back from Amazon. In that communication that we saw, it will tell you that you've got a wrong product number. And so that's key, obviously. And the reason that we use the PunchOut is that the employees don't have to then type in item numbers. They can just look for the products that they want, and then therefore that's handled and transferred through the system. One question was, what version of Dynamics 365 SCM does this work with? This capability, the external catalogs requisition, and specifically the ability to send CXML purchase orders, it's been in D365 as a feature since around 2020. So it's been in the product for a good number of years. And so any current version since 2020, or if you're up to date, you can enable these capabilities. So it has been in the product for a good amount of time that you can use these capabilities. So whatever version you're on, you'll be able to use the same that we've demonstrated here today. So maybe one question from that I saw here for the Amazon team. It's a bit of a long question. Let me just read it and see. They've set up an Amazon business account, and they've generated and got the credentials set up. When they go to check out in the shopping basket, they're being asked for shipping details and payment details. Is that a configuration on the Amazon business account for being asked for that?
Yeah, we can help you with that. Actually, you can go. We have something called pay by invoice, where Amazon give a line of credit where you can use it for towards testing and then eventually for your orders. So once orders are fulfilled, you can pay back with terms 30 or 45, whatever we agree upon. And we also have an option for the customer to add their credit cards, business credit cards, or the credit card or P cards to your account to make purchases towards it. So we can definitely circle back on this, and we can help you set up this one after the webinar.
Yeah, and let me add some color to that. Based off what I heard on that, I think the shipping details, this may be part of what the question was, is the customers may be asking, do they have to type in where they're getting it shipped to? Will that be done in Amazon Business, or is that going to be done in Dynamics? The answer is to both, right? You could pre-populate your shipping addresses in there, or if you have a segment of field sales folks or people working from home, they could populate that address in there. And then within Dynamics, as you may have saw in the demo, that shipping address will also be addressed in there as well. But whoever asked that question, I would definitely, we can follow up with you to give you a little bit more clarity if Maheshra and I actually didn't answer that particular part of the question, so we can make sure it's addressed.
Yeah, so just to add one more item there, actually, we do have an option called ship to home. So which will ship the items to the address given at the time of punch out, right? So there are two ways where you give the ship to address at the time of checkout, where Laklan, at the time of checkout, and also on the purchase order. So we do have an option to use either of them based on your business use case. Yeah, we can definitely connect on that.
Sounds good. Lots of great questions in the chat. One of them was, can I use the CXML in a sandbox? You can certainly do that. Obviously, you want to do that in a sandbox if you're setting up and doing configuration. You can use it in a sandbox environment, obviously, or a production instance. There is the parameter on both the CXML setup, whether it's in test mode, or on the Amazon business account side, whether it's in test mode. So you can use those when you're working in sandboxes to determine the level of communication that you've got sending backwards and forwards. One of the questions was, is this only working in supply chain, or does it work with commerce? So commerce obviously is built on top of the core supply chain capabilities in Dynamics. So if you are just using our commerce capabilities, you can certainly turn on our procurement capabilities. That's obviously just configured within the supply chain module. But certainly if you are a commerce customer, it's the same product, it's the same functionality. It's just a matter of turning it on to use within your instance there. So that's available. There is a question about where can we find the downloadable resources. We will share the links as a follow-up in the presentation for the Amazon setup guide, for example. There's a couple of other set of questions just going through. Can we use UNSPC codes for creating PunchOut requests? That's certainly possible in the catalog configuration that you use in Dynamics, how you set up your categories. You can either use UNSPC codes as the category or the category name, if it's a more user-friendly name, does have a code that you can put in the UNSPC code. If you want to use both the user-friendly name or the UNSPC code, that is configured in the category setup in Dynamics. So that's certainly possible. Just reading a couple of other questions. Does the integration only consider that the functionality is established for the point of view of Amazon being an in-house supplier, or can it be integrated as part of a build to commerce portal to generate sales? So in this context, if I sort of interpret the question, in this context, we're using the procurement functionality to purchase products from Amazon. And so if you are looking at selling products, for example, that you happen to purchase from Amazon, obviously that product, when you purchase it, would go into inventory once you've acquired it. How you sell it, either through a sales order or selling it through commerce capabilities in point of sale, that's totally up to you. What you're doing is obviously purchasing from a supplier. Amazon, in this case, is representing multiple different suppliers that you could be working with. So think of it in that context in terms of where am I procuring materials from. Hopefully that answers, if I'm interpreting that question right. If there's no questions, again, really appreciate you joining. The Amazon business team have done a great job at providing sort of the documentation and setup, and links to our documentation if you wanted to get started there. We think it is a good capability. We do have a lot of customers in Dynamics that are using the capability. So it is pretty easy to sort of get started and up and running there. So if no more questions, I appreciate you joining today, and feel free to reach out to us if you want to find out more information after. All right, with that, we might end it for today. Thank you very much again for joining.